our first speaker, I will go already to our first speaker since time is short. So the first speaker I have the honor to introduce today will be Dr. Claude Begle from Switzerland, the president and CEO of the Symbio-Swiss investment firm, a former member of the Swiss Parliament, and a man of a world-level experience in the field of top business management. He had top managerial positions in Nestlé and many other companies around the world. But Dr. Begle is also a man who connects passionately to peoples and cultures. And one of his deep concerns is the balanced solution to the division of the Korean Peninsula. So this summit was so important to him that Dr. Begle decided to endure 1 week of quarantine in a hotel, locked in a hotel room in Korea, in order to be present today with us. So it's with great pleasure, but also with much gratitude, that I want to introduce our first speaker and ask you to welcome with me Dr. Claude Begle to the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will try to give you, as a true Swiss, a balanced view of what I have seen. And if I'm going to hurt some people, I apologize in advance. The Korean conflict is one of the last dinosaurs of the Cold War, of Stalinism versus McCarthyism. But fortunately, the situation has evolved. As we all know, South Korea embraced a democratic system, the economic system of the West, and entered into a fantastic economic journey and also freedom, and congratulations. Now, perhaps the perception that people have of North Korea, in my view, we should sometimes revisit. If it is true that the regime in Pyongyang considers very important to maintain the preeminence of the party, just like the Chinese, who want not to negotiate ever the leadership of the Communist Party, they talk about only that question of preeminence, not about the communist system. It does not really imply that it's going to continue to be a Marxist-Stalinistic organization, especially as far as the economy is concerned. There are two conflicts in one. There is, of course, the conflict between South Korea and North Korea with the DMZ, but there is also a more global and actually more important conflict, which is between the USA and China. And to some extent, both sides of Korea are like the proxies of the huge strategic game which is playing currently between those two giants. Koreans constitute a very defined nation, unlike many other countries. Unlike many countries which exist on the map, but do not have common traditions, a common culture. I would dare to say that Koreans as a whole are very nationalistic about what means the Korean identity. So therefore, in my view, they have a legitimate right to be again together and to build the future together. Now, apart from the military conflict, there is unfortunately a propaganda war. And I would like to say on both sides. it's obvious that in the North, there's a lot of brainwashing, there is no freedom of speech. We all know that. It's dictatorship. But there is also a very big propaganda exercise here in the South. And I believe that it will be important to play it down and plant the seeds of a better mutual respect, that mutual respect and face-saving, which is so important in that part of the world. It's not a question of the one winning and the other one being defeated. It's a question of finding a solution together. I'm convinced that Koreans, North and South, Koreans are Koreans. And it means those are smart people, those are hard worker people. The success of South Korea would not have been possible without that characteristics of the Korean people. But I do not agree when people say in South Korea people work because they are motivated, and in North Korea they work because they are forced to. A little bit perhaps, but mainly it's because Koreans on both sides are people who are hardworking and want to be perfectionists. There is also a belief that in North Korea the economic situation would be like in Russia just before the collapse of the Soviet Union. This is not true. This is at least not what I have seen. When I traveled in North Korea, and I had insisted not to be shown only the Potemkin type of things, what I have seen is that they were really, despite of the sanctions, trying to produce as much as they could with the means they had, most of the things they needed. So you do not have in North Korea that kind of apathy, of lethargy, which you had in Russia during the last years of the communism. Both South and North Korea invest in the knowledge economy. South, we all know. North, I was surprised to see how they invest into constant education, even for the people already in the factories. They want to push education and learning and science first because they want, like quite a number of Asian nations, to be part of that future wave which will, in my view, put Asia in the #1 position worldwide. I personally believe, I may be wrong, but I believe that the North Korean leaders are considering as a serious option to open up. Now, it doesn't mean they have decided to do that. They always have plan A, plan B, but I think they consider it as a possibility. And it depends on the conditions for themselves. Never forget, for themselves, the leaders, and for the country. The North Korean nuclear program is a threat and deserves to be criticized, no doubt about it. However, I personally think that the true intention behind it is not just military. Frankly speaking, if there was a war, they would lose the war. They would be smashed. But the reason why they do that is, #1, to get attention of the open world, especially to get the attention of the US, to negotiate something and probably get out of the sanctions, and B, to feed the huge propaganda organization inside the country so that the people can be proud of their leader. They need a strong speech, like many people in the Middle East, for example. Now, I believe that President Trump was right in trying to open the door, as very well expressed this morning by Vice President Mike Pence. Why not to try? And also, as Prime Minister Olmert mentioned, be prepared to modify your initial plan if the situation says that you have to do it. It's important to take in consideration all aspects, including, we just heard it, the North Korean fears, and that nobody loses face. I don't believe one should be a winner and the other one should have lost the game. It's a question of finding a solution that both can be the winners. President Kim Jong-un has just defined, it's public, the economy as his main priority, this before the foreign policy. What I could observe when I was in a mission there was that beside the military industry and second, the heavy industry, which are the two main pillars, of course, of the country, they are making an increased effort in developing the light industry and the consumption, which is quite interesting. I could give a lot of examples, but I don't want to waste your time. I do believe that the economy is a key component to the solution. And there are, as several people said, strong potential economic synergies between both sides of Korea. There is a need. The need of the day is for platform for dialogues, to gradually eliminate the misunderstanding, the fears which are cultivated by the propaganda on both sides, and to gradually establish a mutual trust. And this is where the Universal Peace Federation has gained for itself a very serious credibility and can play a major role. Those are seeds for peace, seeds for peace, the first enablers of a constructive dialogue. That phase needs to be inspirational and must be based, as Minister Yoshinori Ono just said, be based on straightforward human relations. In parallel, will be conducted political diplomatic talks on disarmament, on lifting on sanctions, and on the future institutional organization, which, in my view, should not be one state, but should be federal system, with, yes, one state, but some particularities being accepted for each of those, as we have in certain of the Western models. Switzerland is a case. That will imply face-to-face meeting between the prime protagonists, and there are four, the US, China, South and North Korea. Now, beside those, I see that Mongolians or Vietnamese can play an interesting role because they have already gone from the previous communist system to the open economy one. And they could provide some advantages. Equally, the European Union, or countries like Norway or Switzerland, can act as side facilitators. And those facilitators should not run the negotiations, but be enablers and helpers. And now we are going to have, I think, Dominique de Villepin, and it will be very interesting to hear the opinion of the EU, but I believe that between America and China, Europe has a role to play. Thank you.